Welcome to the Couples Expert Podcast with Stuart Fensterheim, LCSW, your source for the latest tips and practical down-to-earth advice on creating emotionally connected, thriving relationships. Now, here's Stuart.
Hi there, and welcome to the Couples Expert Relationship Podcast. This is Stuart Fensterheim, the Couples Expert. You are joining me today to have an exciting opportunity to meet the person in my life who is the most important person in the world, and that's my wife. My wife, Debbie, and I share our life, share our passion for helping couples really have a relationship that is special and not just ordinary. And we're going to be talking today about something that is a real passion for Debbie and I, which is our love for our child. We have a child that is about 8 years old, and he has 4 legs. He was born with a different kind of problem that a lot of people, and the real problem is that he barks as well. Yes, I did say he barks, because who am I talking about? I'm talking about our son, and his name is Ollie. Debbie, welcome to the podcast. I am so thrilled that you've joined me today. I've been trying to get you to come on for quite a while now, and I just am very excited that you've going to be sharing this passion of mine in helping couples have a relationship that is special, unique, and something where they know that they can count on one another. And that's something I believe that the two of us share as well in our life. And one of the things that we share and really love tremendously is our child, Ollie, who is a dog that we have had now for about 4 years. What's interesting about how old he is you and I were just having a little bit of a tiff. I guess I wouldn't call it a tiff, but a teasing back and forth in the fact that I couldn't remember how old he was.
Right. And I said that isn't that unusual because you can't remember how old his kids are either. So why remember how old the dog is?
And I think that's a good lead in to really how Ollie has had such a positive impact on the two of us in bringing us closer together, in sharing Ollie as part of our family and the meaning that he has had to bringing us closer together. Wouldn't you agree that?
Yep.
Maybe you can talk a little bit about our experience and why we decided to foster, because I know that when we got married, we had a dog named Lulu. And that was a dog that you had previously prior to our marriage. Could you tell my listeners a little bit about Lulu and some of the reasons that we began to foster?
Sure. I had gotten Lulu after Sandy had passed away. Lulu was a lab mix, and she was an older dog. I think when we got married, she was probably about 13 or 14 years old. And Stuart had a little Chihuahua mix, Timon, who was a Chihuahua and a Dachshund.
A Chiweenie. And that is really true. And I knew that we had jokingly done that at one point. And then we were online for something. We actually saw Chiweenie as a real
Yeah, it
thing.
is a real mixed breed that they breed on purpose. But at first, they didn't get along, Timon and Lulu, but then they kind of settled in and they became like best buddies. And then we lost Timon suddenly. So once we lost Timon, poor Lulu was always looking for Timon. We were living in 2 different houses, and every time we'd go over to the other house, she'd be looking for Timon. And we frequently take our dogs to my mom and dad's house. And when we would go over there, she'd be looking around there. So it was pretty apparent that Lulu was depressed and she was missing Timon. But at the same time, she was, I think, about 14 years old when this happened. So I had suggested that perhaps we could foster. One of the neighbors in the neighborhood had done this with a golden retriever. She had lost a dog and she started fostering and told me that's how she got her dog. So I thought it was a good opportunity to kind of test drive a dog and see if Lulu would accept a dog. So that's kind of how we got into the fostering.
And if you recall, I was resistant to it at first because part of what I had said is, number one, I thought it might be a little bit of a pain in the butt. And number two, not sure how you or I would do with, and this is something I hear a lot from other people who find out that we foster, is that you get so attached that you don't want to let go and that it's too hard. And I think that you and I have found that not being a significant issue.
Right. And I think that was a concern initially, but I think we both kind of had a certain type of dog in mind that we wanted to adopt. So I think that made it a little easier knowing what we wanted and, seeing these different dogs and, realizing that they weren't exactly what we had in mind for our adoption. So, it was
a mindset, wasn't it, that we both had about that, and a commitment to find what they call the forever home.
Right. And we targeted a lab rescue.
Mention the lab. I think it would be nice for the folks to know that.
We foster for Desert Labrador Retriever Rescue. So if you're familiar with labs, you know that labs come in different colors and different sizes. And Lulu, the dog I had before, was a mix, but she was on the smaller side. So in my mind, I thought we wanted a smaller, and she was yellow female. And so, like I said, when we had fosters come, labs come in different shapes and sizes. So the initial dogs we got were very large. I think the first one we got, her name was Kina. She was large. She was 80 something pounds. She was young. I think she was a couple years old. She was a little more active than we were used to.
She was a player.
And
Lulu being 11 or 12 at the time.
Right. We knew that wasn't a great fit, but we got her, and since she was young and she didn't have any issues, we only had her a couple days. We took her to a meet and greet, which is an event at some predetermined location where you bring the dogs that you want to adopt out, and people come and see them. And, if they're interested in them, you talk to them as the foster, and then they have the potential to adopt the dog. So Kina went quickly because she was young.
It was
and
so
female.
Fast.
Yeah, I think we had her like 2 days or maybe 3 days at the most. So the first one was kind of easy, and we thought, oh, this is kind of easy. You have a dog for a couple of days, you take her somewhere, and, she gets adopted out, and poof, she's gone. So we had a good first experience.
It hasn't always been that way. As a matter of fact, the last dog that we've had as a foster, we had for 3.5 months because the dog had lots of behavioral problems. And I think it really goes, and it's so important to sort of understand in fostering, the commitment that you make to the dog is lifelong. That if the dog doesn't get adopted out, you don't give up. You keep the dog as long as is necessary. And what's sort of cool about being a foster, particularly for this rescue, is you have total unilateral control over who gets the dog. The interview, it is totally, they basically hand you the dog, and once you have the dog, you decide the whole thing. You decide who it will be, you decide, and you could just your gut tells you this is not an okay fit, and you don't have to do that. We get to decide because the commitment we make is not to have dogs that bounces around. And as a matter of fact, I recall the one couple we had where they had a dog that they had just lost. And I'm trying to remember the whole story, but something to the effect of they wanted a young dog, and then they said they wanted a second one, and they had a baby, and I can't remember how old the child was.
It was young. I think it was like a 2-year-old.
And they said, this is perfect. And as a matter of fact, we both walked out saying, gosh, this is a family that would work so well. However, Debbie and I decided to tell these folks no, because we didn't feel that their life would fit for that kind of dog. And you're much more passionate, and not just passionate, but you feel very strongly about dogs. And one of the things I want to talk about is when we first got, I think it was Ollie, we were having some trouble with some behaviors of his. So we hired a trainer, and it starts with an A. It was
I want to say Omar, but it wasn't.
no, it wasn't Omar. Anyway, and Anton was this. We were given his name from someone that was
Desert Lab.
Desert Lab actually gave it to us. Said that this is the best trainer out there, and we were having trouble with Ollie. Was doing a lot of. He was really seemed a little aggressive with other dogs, wasn't it?
Right. He was just like out of control on a leash when we took him outside.
And Anton came and he showed up with his little dog, which was a pit bull. Oh, that's right. It was a pit bull. Talk about your reaction to Anton. I think I found out my wife is not someone to mess with.
Well, Anton's method was sort of like a drill sergeant, and he came in and he was telling us how he could, get Ollie trained, in 10 minutes or whatever. And he took the leash and, he yanked on him and he had him on the floor and like 5 seconds, but Ollie was shaking. He was so scared of Anton. And then he went outside and he brought this pit bull in that he was so proud of that he trained. Well, this dog looked like a little trained monkey because he didn't let him do anything. I mean, he was like right next to him, and probably because he was scared for his life that he would whack him or something.
And you said there is no blankety-blank way that this guy is ever.
We let Anton leave and said, yeah, we'll let you know. And as soon as the door closed, I said, there's no way that he's getting anywhere near Ollie.
Because of how protective you are about every single dog that we've ever had.
Well, I mean, Ollie was shaking within 30 seconds of being with Anton.
What's sort of interesting, as some of you are aware, Ollie ultimately ended up as a therapy dog for me. And one of the things feedback that I have gotten over the years, because in order to be a therapy dog, you have to go through a specific test, is that the evaluators have always said to me that I'm pretty amazing with Ollie, because the way I interact with Ollie is clearly his being part of the family. I talk with him. I nurture him. I literally have conversations with him as we're going about our day. And the only reason that has ever happened is because of you, Deb, because how you are with animals, dogs, you would be a dog whisperer if I could call it a dog whisperer, because you have a way to have every single dog that we've ever had really feel loved by you.
Well, I try to make them feel like they're home when they are here. So, especially since a lot of them come from the pound or they come from situations where, families give them up suddenly. So I guess I'd like the dog to feel like they're safe here. And this is sort of their interim
and your
home
mom.
Away from home.
And you're absolutely mom.
Yeah, well, I try.
That's why I sort of jokingly said early on in the introduction that Ollie's our son, because that is how you refer to him.
He's our son, yes.
And not only does my wife treat these dogs but she has a memory of these dogs that are like they are family. And we've now had how many?
20.
And you have a list that you make, and talk about why you've kept this list.
Well, I started with the list because I couldn't remember. I wanted to remember their names.
Why?
Well, just so we could talk about them. And the other thing I did from the start was that I take pictures of all the dogs. When we get a foster, we have to do a posting online. So I have to take pictures so we can post them. But the other thing I started doing was, I call it the farewell picture. Before the dog gets adopted out, I'll take Ollie and then the foster, and I'll take a picture of them together. So I have 20 pictures of all the different fosters we have with Ollie. So that's kind of where it got started. And I wanted to keep track of their names too. So I have a list of their names, and I also put the dates down that we had them. So
we're about to do something in our home, which is to create a wall with all these dogs, aren't we?
Yeah, I got a bulletin board. I'm going to print out all the pictures and put them up there.
And that's the commitment that I live with, and that's the incredible love that my wife has, that she shares with every dog that we have, and why I feel so fortunate to have someone that gives the way that she does to those people that she loves. So, Deb, I want to tell you how much I love you for that.
Oh, thank you.
You know, one of the things that I wanted to talk about in terms of the fostering is a little bit about Ollie and a little bit about how he in particular came to our life, because as I said, I was a little anxious about doing this fostering. And then the first few dogs that we had clearly were afraid of me. But it wasn't just me. It was all men. At least it appeared that way. One of the first dogs we had, name was Jojo. And Jojo was a black lab, I believe. Chocolate. Okay, excuse me. See, I got to be particular with this. There is a difference. And by the way, part of why she's clarifying that is black and chocolate labs have a historical significance to be the breed or the color of labs that are most likely not to get adopted.
Black is the worst. Right? Yeah, they say that in shelters, black dogs are the last to be adopted because they just don't appear to be as friendly as lighter colored dogs. So, and
it's prejudice, isn't it, against the color? Because most of the black labs that we've had have been incredibly loving. So Jojo would cower in the corner whenever I'd come into the room. And part of what Deb used to tell me is that I'm not patient enough and that I should just keep trying. But every time I would keep trying, they would run away in fear and clearly would shake. We had the one that would actually go up to a wall.
That was Jojo.
Was that Jojo?
Yeah, well, Jojo was the one also that didn't come out of the crate probably the first day or so. She was just so scared she didn't want to get out of the crate.
And this will tell you a little bit about fostering, because we went back and forth about Jojo and what are we going to do? You know, if he's this afraid of man, how are we going to get him adopted out? Because there's typically families who we adopt out to. And we got creative. And I am so proud of us, of what we did. Tell everyone how we sort of made that work.
Well, I think we posted that it had to be a female.
Right.
So we did get someone that had recently lost a chocolate lab, and she wanted a chocolate lab. So she came and saw Jojo, and, you know, she was well aware of the issues that Jojo had. And it just so happened that she happened to be
a gay couple.
So
it was a lesbian pair that was really wanting to add to their family.
So when she first came, she said, yeah, I'm interested, but I want to bring my friend with me and make sure that, you know, she meets her and they get along. So we did that. And
that was really cool, actually, for us to be able to add to someone's family. So we had Jojo, and then we had a few dogs like that. And then it came time, because there's a rule with fostering that you have to foster out at least, I think it was 3 or 4, was it?
Yeah, I think it was 4.
Yeah, 4 dogs before you can adopt them on your own. And then we were now ready to do that. So we were keeping our eyes and ears open. But my wife had this thing where she said no male dogs. She did not want a male dog because Lulu was a female, and that's all. Did you only?
No, I never had a male dog.
Never had a male dog. So it was a negative. Don't even look at a male dog. Don't even talk to me about a male dog.
Right. And the other stipulation I had is that we didn't want a 90-pound dog.
Right.
So,
and tell them why. Because I remember do you remember the reason?
Oh, because, we had a couple dogs that practically pulled me over. So I decided I didn't want a big dog like that. Well, they were kind of not trained very well either. So I guess.
But it was something else. I remember this. I don't know if you recall. What Debbie said to me is, when we make this commitment, it's forever. And dogs, particularly labs in particular, are known to have hip problems. And that's actually why Lulu we ended up putting her down, was that her hips gave out.
Right.
And she said, there's no way I'm picking up a 90-pound dog with no hips and putting him on the bed, so no way. And I happened to be going through, because we get a list of the available fosters, And I saw this one, and it was a Ollie.
Sundance.
Sundance. It was called Sundance because a lot of times they just name the dogs. And I went over to look at him, thinking I might be able to talk her into it, but hoping at least. And he was perfect. He was yellow. He was 57 pounds, and he was cute. He was affectionate. And truthfully, why I went first is I wanted to make sure he was not a man-hater, because I had my fill of those, where I wanted to be able to connect with the dog. Being an EFT therapist, you know how important connection is to me. So I threw him in my car, which I wasn't supposed to really do, and brought him home to show Debbie. And Debbie saw him, fell right in love with him. And then I broke the news to her that, by the way, this is a male dog. Do you remember what you said?
Right. I knew he was a male.
And how did you react?
I said, well, we'll look at him and we'll see.
Right. And brought him out here, and she fell in love with him. So we decided that he would be someone that we'd start out fostering. And so I brought him back because I had to get him back. But lo and behold, what happened? Ollie had a little bit of a mischievous streak in him. I pulled back up to the kennel, and he literally jumped out over my head and ran. Now, remember, I'm doing this sort of against the rules. And he's running down the street. So I'm running after him. And I have to tell you guys, not really good at trying to track down a dog who's double as fast as I am. I found this guy who was a gardener. We jumped into his truck and we chased Ollie. We brought him back. And he goes, what the heck's going on? No, I'm not going back in there. He tried to run, and we put him in, and ultimately we adopted him and fostered him first. And it's been heavens ever since. So what do you think how Ollie has impacted our life?
Well, having Ollie makes us appreciate the time we spend together, because we can spend it with Ollie. Also, because there's nothing like a dog, because he'll tell you right away when he wants to go for a walk. So we pretty much spend a lot of time walking him. We, walk around the neighborhood. We get to converse with the neighbors. The other thing we like to do with Ollie is there's a Starbucks that's about a mile away. So we will walk down there with Ollie, and he gets a puppuccino, which is a Starbucks cup with a big old squirt of whipped cream in it.
Do you remember when we first found out about puppuccinos? Because we didn't even know about it.
We saw somebody else with a cup that a dog was licking, and we asked them what it was, and they told us that it was a puppuccino, and all you had to do is go inside and ask for it. So now it's become like a regular thing. He expects a puppuccino if he goes to Starbucks.
But not just a puppuccino, because we have to get a puppuccino and
plus
also ice.
Ice. He wants a glass of ice water because he likes to chomp on the ice cubes.
Which is sort of interesting, because the other thing that Ollie loves is not just ice and puppuccinos, because for a while there I was taking him with me to work. And what's his favorite thing in the world?
McDonald's ice cream cones.
And you just gave him one recently. And tell him how he does this. I think it's pretty cool. How he does the ice cream cone.
Yeah, I thought he would possibly lick it. And apparently he had a different idea, because he pretty much just took the whole thing and chomped on it in one big gulp.
And what's so cool about that is that he's, being that I've now trained him as a therapy dog, we can take him into almost any setting. And that's one of the things that I think, for me, how Ollie has really impacted Debbie and I in our relationship. It's become a real social thing. And you were talking about we take him for the walks. But one of the things we recently, over the last few years, moved into a house. And what's really neat is that they have a green belt. And in the green belt, we go as many times as we can, because Debbie and I both work. It's sort of harder. But there's a group of us that have actually created our own dog park. And we've now gotten really friendly with our neighbors, which we never would have if it wasn't for Ollie. And not only we've gotten friendly, but Ollie has made lots of friends, friends.
He knows all the neighborhood dogs.
And he sort of runs with the pack. and they go out and they play and they do all sorts of things. And I think one of the things Ollie has done for Debbie and I also is that when we're triggered, and, as I've talked before in other podcasts, even I get triggered. Ollie has a way of he's sort of skittish to loud noises. So when Debbie and I, if we're ever in sort of a little bit of a conflict and raising our voices, we can always tell that Ollie gets sort of upset by it.
He gets upset and he kind of crouches down and
goes to the other room sometimes.
Yeah,
even.
He'll leave.
And then we've been known to say, see what you did?
Yeah, see what you did.
And Ollie just comes up to us and basically says, "You're mom and dad, and we don't want you to fight." And
he's like a peacemaker.
He's our peacemaker at times. And the commitment that we have to Ollie is really very much like a child. And it's just sort of our way of really knowing that life is okay because we have all three of us. Before we close for today, I think one of the things that I want to really talk about is commitment that I have and Debbie has to really encourage those of you out there that are interested in having a dog to please consider a rescue. There are so many rescues out there. There are so many dogs that have been abandoned by owners or been abused that really could use a loving, caring family. And we get sometimes a little bit concerned about how many people we know that go to breeders. While the breeders you may find more of a purebred, but there are so many dogs that need someone loving them. And I encourage you, if you have any interest, and there are many, many rescues out there. There are Chihuahua rescues, there's Pit Bull rescues, just about every breed you can imagine has a rescue. That if you're interested in doing that, to contact the rescue and talk about being a foster, because it really is something that is of great value and really has you feeling good about yourself. Thanks for joining us again this week and talking about one of my passions, which is the fostering. The other thing I'm going to do is for our next podcast, we're going to talk about therapy dogs. And I'm going to have on my show Pam Gaber from Gabriel's Angels. And it's an organization that's going to share with you about therapy dogs and really the power of healing that dogs have for those in abused homes or those that are out of home placement or people that really just need someone to love and someone to love them. So we'll see you next time and take care. Debbie, I want to thank you for coming on the show. I know this is sort of like the last thing that you would have chosen to do. It's very out of the box for you. And I know that the only reason you did it is because of your love for me and wanting to give me a great experience of having you on my show.
Thanks. It's been great to share our experiences with your listeners.
So long, and we'll see you next time on the Couples Expert Podcast. Keep connecting. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to today's episode with your host, Stuart Fensterheim. You're one step closer to reigniting that fiery passion with your partner. For more information
and your 30-minute free phone consultation with Stuart,
visit www.thecouplesexpertscottsdale.com. We'll see you next time.